This is Motovation. I'm Laurie Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Krissy Vann. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
Picture this. You're cruising down the highway, the wind in your face, the rumble of your machine beneath you. But then, without warning, a mechanical hiccup, a sputter, and your bike comes to a grinding halt. It's a moment every rider dreads, the sudden silence, the feeling of being stranded. But we know no biker is ever stranded. It's the community that will come, pull over, and make sure that you're not alone. Similarly in life, we dread the moments that seemingly bring our current life trajectory to a halt. The ones that bring the rawest of emotions to the surface in insurmountable waves. In today's episode, we'll explore the beauty of the camaraderie and unspoken promise of support that's found within the riding community and within the deep relationships we form in our lives. We'll talk about the tales of breakdowns that have turned into bonds deeper than we could have ever imagined. And I'll be sharing a deeply personal story of a recent struggle I've encountered, where I've personally witnessed the power of community support to bear witness to some of the heaviest pain and emotions life can throw one's way. This is the Motovation. Well, it's been a hot moment since I have joined you here, and I'm going to share a glimpse into why without going into all of it, and you'll understand once we kind of dive in here. But basically, a month today actually would have been my birthday. Oh, the birthday. And what occurred the day before my birthday is my partner of 20 years, married for 12 as of this May, said and expressed that they no longer wish to be married, which was a blindsiding statement. If you were me, there's been a ton of shock and grief in between. And I just want to say I have a ton of respect for the other party. This whole situation that we're navigating is full of love and communication. And maybe someday I'll be able to peel back more layers for you to understand why that's so possible in this space. But I just from the get-go don't want to paint them as a villain in any capacity, because it's one thing to be like, I got blindsided on my birthday. If that was a headline, it doesn't sound good. If you were my former partner, it really
not
doesn't.
Ideal. No,
not ideal timing. But there's so much more to the story. And in the spirit of being vulnerable, Laurie and I actually got on the mic. I think it probably would have been about 4 days into this.
Yeah.
Very raw, tons of emotions at the surface, which there most definitely still are. But we did that with an intention of knowing that we built this platform on mutual sharing. It's why you've connected with us here at the Motovation. But out of respect to the other party, we'll know when it's time to bring that to the forefront, because I do think that there's a lot of value and lessons to be learned about our tools and how they really save the day when you quite literally get knocked on your ass. And it's crazy, Laurie, because you and I talk about those moments in life when you get completely rug pulled out from under your feet, don't know which way is up and down, and how they seemingly come out of nowhere. And that's what I'm very much in still. And I am in a marathon, and I'm in a marathon I've never trained for. I don't know what the terrain looks like. I don't have a coach. I've ran, I've walked, I've crawled. I've not moved and thought I couldn't continue. But I'm glad to be here today, because one of the things that has been, it's like actually one of the things that has made me emotional almost every time I've talked about it is my community and the soft place to land. So today we're going to talk about when you're going through bad things, one of the most number one comments somebody says to you. And if you're on any Instagram thread, if somebody's public about their pain, stay strong. You've got this, stay strong. And I'm like, fuck that. Let's stop telling people to stay strong. Let's tell them to fall the fuck apart like a crunchy taco. And you take the first bite, and the first bite's that shitty thing that happened. And there's lettuce flying, and there's beef down your shirt, and the entire shell that you had holding everything together has crumbled in your hand. Honestly, I don't even know why they exist, but that's what happens. And that has been me. And it's honestly the first time I faced something where I allowed myself to completely crumble crunchy taco to my core. But what showed up in that space were my people. And they fucking showed up. And when I say that, I mean it in just this, I've had like this insane gratitude toward the process of reaching out when you are in your deepest pain and allowing someone to witness and sit with you in that pain. And truthfully, if I hadn't had safe places to land and do that, I definitely know I wouldn't be on the microphone today. And I just want to preface this by saying I'm not through this. I am in a deep state of grief. I'm bouncing through all of the emotions still in a very big way. But having people to support and hold you as all those waves of whatever's knocking you at any given time, there is a tremendous power in that and a reminder of our humanness. There's a version of me not that long ago that, I've never known this type of pain in this way. And I want to say, to illustrate to you, it's my first heartbreak and I'm 37. So it's been very new territory. But there is a time that I would have hidden all of it. I'm good at that. I could definitely have put on a face that said, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. How many people say that in their day when there are layers upon layers of pain and behind them? This time I wasn't going to do it that way. And as I say, the most moving part of this experience has been to allow people in to witness the pain, not fix it, not advise my way out of it, not tell me what to do, not say fuck him, which really wouldn't be appropriate in this case. But honestly, some people just want to remedy the situation as quickly as we can. We're witnessing this taco fall apart and you're like, my God, I'll get you another shell. We'll put it in, we'll put it back together. And you're like, no. That's not actually the point of showing up for an individual. So today it's really about talking about from the side when you are going through the roughest part of life, why it's important to let those guards down. Because for a long time, I prided myself on the fact that they were my power. I viewed falling apart as the weakness. And boy, did I have it wrong. And on the other side, speaking to if you are showing up for a human in your space, what we tend to try and do as humans, which is very natural, but not necessarily what the person needs. So we will address that, but also talk about the best ways to sit with someone in their pain. Because Laurie, as you said a comment when we were sitting down together the one day when I was just broken on my couch. And it was the simplest thing. And I know I've repeated it a couple times in this intro here, but saying pain is meant to be witnessed. And I've actually imprinted that on my heart because the beauty of that sentiment is something that I am still reflecting and really trying to absorb, because the power of sitting with somebody in that and having it witnessed, I've had many emotional moments just reflecting on the depth of the humanness of it. It's the best way that I can say it.
It took me a long time to get to that place as well. I was very much the same mindset, philosophy of like, suck it up or just like really complain about it. And it took me a long time and a lot of introspective work and healing work and all the things to just better understand the power of emotion and the power that it's there for us, not against us, not something to be bypassed, not something to be avoided, not something that's in our way, not something that deems us weak, but that it is a powerful part of our human experience that offers an exceptional amount of wisdom on the other side of it. But we avoid it because so often too, we let it make decisions for us. We react within it. We try and problem solve while it's taking place in the hurricane of it all versus just the feeling of it. And then the very uncomfortable, painful experience of feeling it. Thus why we also try and bypass it. You have a sore back, you have a sore this, we take Advil, we take Tylenol. We're in this constant state of bypassing. And then we have a society and a culture that also very much promotes bypassing. You suck it up. Well, you don't go running on a sprained ankle. You would do more
have a
damage.
Drink. Have a drink, do the drugs,
all the things,
like
right?
anything to numb
it,
pain,
tuck it
mentally.
up, all the different things. Yeah. And sometimes it really feels like that works because you go, oh, it did lessen the pain. But then you see all these repercussions take place. You get more, bitterness comes out in certain little areas where it didn't before. You're more paranoid, or there's lack of trust going into the next relationship. Whatever it looks like, you pay a different price somewhere else. And everybody around us is doing it. So it seems like that's how we human. And it's not. We're paying really big prices in our mental health, our physical health, and all the different things. And so coming back to that statement of like, pain is to be witnessed, it's like our human experience a lot of times is so much more debilitating or painful or confusing because of the fact that we have so few of us that understand the power of just being alongside someone as they process and experience whatever deep emotion that they're feeling. We're so on board to be side by someone that's experiencing joy or exhilaration, or, we just love to celebrate and we love to be there. And we go to the weddings, or we're like, like we are there for that. But when it comes to pain, it excavates our own that we have suppressed or have no ability or understanding how to process. And so that's where we also will avoid other people's pain. And then that becomes more painful because there is such a soothing, really natural healing balm about just having someone witness your experience. Again, not try and fix it, not trying this and that. And there is time for advice, and there is time for like, hey, like, let's change the lens, or da-da-da. Like there's places and times, but when we're in that real state of blood raw emotion, that's just like sitting with the person side by side, not taking it on, but absolutely joining them in just the rawness of that moment. And it took me a very long time to learn that. I'm still figuring it out, but the more that I have had the opportunity to do that, the more I have become very comfortable there, where it was so uncomfortable for so long, but it's like a muscle. And it allows me, when I'm in those moments where I want to bypass, or when I'm just on my own, I'm like, sit with yourself, Laurie. Like, offer that same love, compassion, regulation. Like, we have so many different parts of ourselves within ourselves. And so sometimes I'm like, bring that, Laurie, and sit with the one that's in pain right now, or is annoyed, or feels whatever is feeling. It goes a long, long way. What I've seen in feedback from friends and family, that they're just like, that felt different. And you're like, it felt different on my end too.
Yeah. When you talk about how we don't want to sit with somebody else's pain necessarily because it excavates what's deep seated in us.
Yeah.
That's probably what I've recognized the most from going through this experience. And as much as my plate is emotionally very full at the moment, which is an understatement of the century, I have taken time to do some hefty reflection. Like, this is where I say the amount that I've received in that space, I couldn't not look at myself and why I was the way I was in a lot of situations. I was exactly that. I don't want to go as far as to say repelled, but if somebody wasn't able to move through their shit fast enough, or it was so on display, I hate to admit it, but my brain would be like, what the fuck's wrong with, like, the undertone was, what the fuck's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Why can't you just get it together? I
Yeah.
felt above the feelings, which sounds like a real asshole thing to say, but I genuinely did. My beliefs, I can keep myself together. You must be weaker than I am.
Yeah.
And I don't have time for that. And I'm saying that in the harshest way, but this has been a deep reflection because truthfully, that was the inner narrative.
Mhm.
And I can think of ways that it showed up. A lot of times when people would be struggling, I would be the one that would send the obligatory, let me know if you need anything. Let me know how you can help. I can tell you when you're in those situations, you have no idea what you need or what could be the thing that could help you, or
Mhm.
you do, and you have trouble verbalizing it and even saying it. I'm sure I've been very guilty of sending the keep your chin up, stay strong, which was probably subtext for my taco's intact. And I realize I've used a vagina reference now, but
Love
that's
it.
okay.
It's gorgeous.
But that was genuinely how I felt. And I can tell you that how I show up for people in the future beyond this experience is more than likely going to look very different. Because
believe it.
exactly as you have said, the interchange and the connection and the bond, like when you've been sitting with me, Laurie, or some of the other people in the circle. And for the record, I have no shame over what's happening, but we have like this core group that even has an emergency word if people need their people. But a lot of them were on vacation. And I felt like telling them my
Yeah.
life blew up was not appropriate by a text message. I was like, you enjoy the beautiful scenery. Let's not make this about me, but
Yeah.
there will come a time and a place. But, when I called you in, I mean, I think even our relationship has deepened in this new way. How could it not? I mean, the first night on my birthday, Laurie and I were sitting in a sauna, and it's actually quite funny because Laurie and I, just like our condos, mine looks like a nightclub. Hers is the most zen, cozy, envelop you space. Every year, that Spotify does our roundup. So mine would always be this upbeat, and then hers was melancholy. And
Mine was a vampire. It had a vampire on the front. And I was
just sucks
yeah,
the
that
life
adds
right
up.
out of you.
Yeah.
So we're strolling to the sauna, and I just look at her and I was like, hey, you got that morose playlist going on? And she just looks at me like, I knew this day would come. I knew it. We had a little laugh, but we went in there and we listened to the melancholy, morose sounds, and they rolled over us. And I was just, I'd like to say silently crying, but also not so silently crying. And the tears rolled off of you as well, because we were just sharing the energy
Mhm.
of that space. I know I reached up and you held my hand, and I've never been one intensely to receive physical touch. Truthfully, we'll dive into this with my new therapist, but my mom would like give the fiercest hugs, which I do love, but I would get them and I feel like it was lacking they were lacking the space to actually let the things go in the hug on my end, if that makes sense. And I think that actually perhaps has more to do with why I'm sometimes repelled by touch when I'm upset, because it felt less meaningful. But I allowed you to hold my hand, and I think I gripped it on pretty tight. And it was just that sharing of experience. And same goes for showers became my enemy, because the brain doesn't stop when you take a shower. And I had one day where I was alone in the condo, and it hit me like a fucking Mack truck. The sounds that were coming out of my body were almost primal. The grief was coming up from the depths of my core being. And I sat in it. So Laurie spoke to earlier there, the compassion for ourselves and allowing ourselves to sit in the pain. With the amount of vulnerability work I had done, it's something I kind of vowed to myself in the beginning of this situation, where I was like, I'm going to feel all of it. I am going to give myself permission to feel all of it. It's so foreign to me. I have had to actually out loud verbalize that to myself on several occasions. But I unplugged my TV. I didn't touch a drink, which, trust me, was really tempting. It's not generally my coping mechanism, but it was like some shots of vodka would temporarily take this pain away without question. And instead, I shut all of that down. So now I was just in it. And then I was in it 20 minutes later. And then I was in it 30 minutes later. And then I felt scared. Not scared that I would do something to myself, but truthfully scared of the depths of what this looked like and if it would ever stop. And two of my girlfriends, Laurie being one of them, had created a group chat that was kind of this supportive place for me to land through this experience where I could share voice notes. It became just a public journal at times of what I was feeling. They would share some resources to me. And I held the phone in my hand being like, surely I can just do this. Surely I can just get through this. And then instead I was like, fuck this. I'm going to just like voice where I'm at. At the very least, that felt like the right decision to just get it out. And it was, I don't even know what I said, to be honest, but I managed to get something muffled out in the cheers. And Laurie was on my doorstep no more than 10 minutes later and scooped me up. I was a fucking puddle on my couch. Things were still heaving out of my body. And she didn't even have to say anything. I'm here. Yes, let it out, like the encouragement. And then I will say her hair looked fabulous, as it does today. And I managed to heave out. I was like, your hair looks amazing. And she flipped those luscious locks back and goes, it's neither here nor there. It was so fucking simple. But we burst out laughing. I went from the depths of heaving shit out of my body to a genuine from the soul laughter. And it was in that moment I realized you can also live in the duality of the depths of despair. The witnessing of the pain didn't mean that we just needed to sit in the low. These people can show up as well as the reminder that the contrast exists.
When you go inwards or you're going through, whether you do it because you're just like, look, I'm going to take inventory evaluation of my life, a lot of things that we talk about on this podcast, or you go through something that just absolutely rocks you. You know, like it was one of those things where over those last 5 years that we've talked about extensively in one way or the other, when my life, my world, as I knew it, completely shifted. And so from there, when it was like all the illnesses and people that I loved and all the things, and all of a sudden it was like, I was just seeing how fragile life is. And then I was seeing it through other people's experiences in the hospitals and all the peoples that were coming or people that were coming in and out for their illnesses. And, you know, being in the floor in the hospital where everybody that went in there was leaving without their loved one because it was a palliative care. Or the hospice, they weren't leaving. And so everybody in this floor is saying goodbye to somebody you love. And it was just like all of the sudden, the level of like deep empathy and the level of brought new colors to this palette that I didn't know I didn't have. And as you do the work and as you have the experience, which I'd like to actually point out, you said earlier at the beginning of this episode that when you had found out about, you know, your partner saying, I don't want to be in this after all, you're like, I didn't train for this. And I'm like, but you did a bit because you started your introspective work. You started developing tools. You started developing practices. You started committing time in your day to looking into all of these different things. And so that is the training. That is the training for the marathon, so that you are like, yeah, I got my water bottle. I got my running shoes. I've got because most people are like, I'm starting out with bare feet and I don't even know what direction. I don't even have a clue, because that is what makes you have a capacity to see in those moments the more than one thing can be true. I can be completely heartbroken, but find the joy in my connection with another person in this moment. And the like insanity that is life, that we're sitting here at all to begin with. Because when you say you were blindsided, you're not joking. You were completely blindsided, where most, you know, we're not getting into all of that, but it's not, you know, people could be like, oh, how are you blindsided? It was blindsided. And so sometimes we would just sit and laugh at the like,
absurdity
absurdity of that we were sitting here having this conversation at all, but also the realness of it. And so that's where the training pays off. It allows you to be open to the complexity. It allows you to be open to the dynamicness of it all. It allows you to be open to everything that comes with it, and not just have the decisions from the outside, external, societal, cultural world of how you should experience and move through heartbreak, how you should, which is essentially bypass, keep it moving, move on, blame, just complain, or, like all these just standardized ways that actually aren't healing or helpful at all. And so you did train for this, and you are reaping the benefits of what you've cultivated, even in the people that you've cultivated in your life over the last little bit. Like, you're like, I'm so lucky to have them. And I'm like, well, it's not really luck. Like, you cultivated that. You vibrationally brought those people into your world. And so I'm like, it's not really luck. It's not just like, you're like, I happen to fumble across people that could like hold space and do this thing. And I'm like, but you cultivated those people while doing the work and transforming your life and all those things. And so you're just like, that is how you really, I believe, and understand to be ways in which we can really set ourselves up to take on the complexities and the heaviness that is ultimately life.
Yeah. When I do an audit, I'd say that it's freaky, but it's not because of what I believe. But there are so many things in place in my life, like even right down to my business partner and the support I've had from them, obviously the community that I'm surrounded with. And I'm like, everything has prepared me for this moment. It doesn't allow me to run through how brutal the pain of this experience has been, but it's allowed me to navigate it. And also, the interesting thing is, through all of this, I have not struggled with anxiety. The only time that I struggled with anxiety was when, I would say, in the early days when I had less information and I was very married to an outcome of what this looked like. And so I was creating the resistance within myself. And I think additionally, the reason why I haven't had to deal with anxiety is if I wasn't allowing any of these feelings to move through, they would get stuck. And I know that feeling in my gut that I would have, that ball of just fire and grossness that's in the pit of my stomach. And don't get me wrong, I have many mornings I wake up, cortisol's high, and I'm reminded with that quick flood of life is no longer the same.
Yeah.
I can't avoid that. But normally I pour a coffee and sometimes just have a little cry with my coffee. It passes through. Yes, we are here. Yes, your reality looks very different than it did a couple of weeks ago, and just acknowledging and allowing that. And I think that really speaks to what you said earlier about showing up for yourself as well with that compassion and that same sitting with yourself with it. Because I think that's the overarching message of this episode is, as humans, whether you're the caregiver, so to speak, and you want to be the fixer and you want to just put the Band-Aid on and stay strong and chin up so that everything can just look as close to as it did before and no one has to really reflect or sit in the fact that everything has changed. And as human beings, you want to end up doing the same thing for yourself, but the benefit of letting all those guards down, the benefit of sitting there as a friend and knowing there isn't a right thing to say. And that's okay, because nothing really even needs to be said. You can show up with an empathetic heart, but it's also not taking on their pain. You can show up with a million things of how you think you would navigate the situation, but equally know it's not your situation. So those aren't necessarily the things to share. It's knowing when there is a space that perhaps you have a lens of perspective that could be beneficial to the person, and asking or evaluating, are you in a space to receive this right now? And having that open flow of communication. And all of those things innately feel uncomfortable. I love Laurie to pieces. And even still, when I made that crackled little voice note and knew she was coming, there was a part of me like, fuck, man, this human's about to see me at my absolute worst. But them showing up with an equally open heart, because that is how I visualized it in my brain. I used to have the wall that was up and no one was going to hop over it and see all of me. And I've worked really hard to just push it down. And I kind of visualize it on a hydraulic lever. So it's constantly trying to be like, we're supposed to be up. We're supposed to be up. And instead working really hard to keep it pushed down and just be like, my heart is going to be open to all of this. And someone walked in my door to be like, I can meet you there. And there is such incredible value. Like, actually, I have like a goosebump. I actually don't think it's just me. Laurie kind of gets what I mean when I say that. But what I don't want to say gain out of this pain because it sounds verbalized the wrong way, but it might be the best way to say this. I can fully trust and accept that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And maybe that's as well why there's not resistance. And my partner, I'm like ex-husband, husband, I don't know.
Right.
Weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where we're going, but for themselves as well, I'm like, he's exactly where he's supposed to be. And all of that looks really painful. But I'm like, this is when we speak to that human experience of it's not supposed to be all linear and joyful and okay and appear on the surface. We spend so much time curating what it all looks like from above to the point that we even fool ourselves sometimes of what it should all look like from above, where I'm like, the realness of all of it is in this shit. And that's where I'm like, many times have I said, I wouldn't wish the pain of this experience or his experience on anyone. But in the same breath, I'm like, there's a part of me that's grateful for this experience, which I realize sounds messed up, but it's because I know, to Laurie's point, with the tools that we spoke of, that there is value of sitting in this space. And that's why I'm like, I don't want to bypass it. And I'm extra grateful that I'm surrounded by people that get that. And are like, we will sit in this and we will respect the waves that move through and we won't try to fix you and we won't tell you to stay strong. Fall the fuck apart. Witness it for yourself. Learn the lessons in that, because there is no way going through an experience like this. I'm 1 month in. I'm not the same person that I was a month ago. That's a reality. Where I'm going, I don't know. But I also get to build her. I get to participate in that. I get to choose. And there is a part of me that is acutely aware that there is something really special about that. And I'm not discounting the hurt and the struggle, but there is a beauty in the madness that cannot be denied.
I think it's so important, and I believe it with every fiber of myself. It's what you just said is it doesn't sound awful, not to me. It sounds like the truth when you say like there's value here. That's where I talk about the like wisdom on the other side. Because when you're going through something, it gives you the opportunity to grow through that as well. Like when you go to the gym and you build muscle, you have to actually like strain, and it doesn't feel good and you're sore, but that's how you build. It's the same kind of things, truly, when you're building with inside yourself and when you're going through such an enormous strain and such an enormous experience, there is always some value that will come out of it. There is, and it's not that like there's a silver lining, like you could say that, but that gets a lot of times where it's wanting to bypass it, where it's like, just look for the silver lining. Then you don't have to feel the pain, where it's like, no. You go to that painful space and place. And when you're transitioning through and out of that emotion, because no emotion stays forever. So whether that's an hour later or 10 minutes later in that one moment, and then you breathe, and then you acknowledge that you just even did that you stayed with the feeling, and oh, how does that feel? Like it's these small little valuable drops of, that build to the bigger aha moments, the bigger set where you're like, I have a different wisdom coming out of this. I have a different knowing. I have a different trust in myself. I have a different experience. I have a fuller palette to look at this world and other people. And I can show up differently in the smallest of ways for somebody else when they're in their pain, because I've experienced and have just even a slight whisper of a capacity, and then that grows, and every time you do that with somebody else, that grows within you, and it's this like growing, building organism that comes out of this, that ripples effects into so many other people, because we are so interconnected. And how is that not valuable? How can anybody say, that's how inappropriate or how disrespectful to say that there's value in this? And you go, that is how everything that I have learned and understood, even about human behavior, about the brain, about the nervous system, about everything so far that's accumulated, is like, even the spiritual side of things, like, so I'm talking soul, is that we are meant to have experiences in which we suffer, because it is the contrast of having deep love. It is the contrast of having deep connection. It is hard. It is that, but our level of suffering a lot of times is lost on us because we try and bypass it and we try and avoid it. And so then we miss out on the jewel and the gorgeousness and the value on the other side, which is what we learn from it, what we gain from it, how we expand from it, how we deepen our connection to ourselves and our life and all the different things like that. I believe to be the point of being on earth. Yeah.
I was rewarded endlessly in my life for being an optimist. And let me be clear, I have learned of many darknesses in the world over the last couple of weeks, and I tend to have a really whimsical viewpoint of the world. And it's one of those things where optimism isn't just painting everything with this glossy little brush. Like, you cannot brush over this shit. Like, you actually, I don't think, could be truly optimistic unless you looked at the contrast yet again. But I would get rewarded my whole life for, oh, she's so resilient and she just looks at the sunny side up all of the time. And there's parts of that about myself that I do love. There's parts of that of myself that I realize were bullshit. Like, we're actually like, and I prided myself on it so much. And when you talk about the learning and the growing, I can't possibly know all the lessons that are going to have been gained on the other side of this for me. But I go back to what I said in the beginning, the reflection that I have done and how I've shown up in certain spaces when I've genuinely cared for the other individual. But
yeah,
how I've shown up makes you, I felt guilty. I have felt a bit cringy over decisions I made. And it's not like I had grand gestures or things like that where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But I'm having this realization of I didn't show up in the best way I could as a human. And I'm like, even having that lesson gained through this, I'm grateful for, because I'm like, as you talked about, it is our interconnectedness. And not only did I do a disservice to some people in the past, but the level of connection on the other side of sharing that vulnerability is so profound. Like, I use an example. I don't think my mother-in-law listens to this, but she has some high walls. And for whatever reason with myself, I've been a really safe space, which is something I'm so grateful for. We're really good friends as well as relatives. And they were kind of speaking to the fact that they've never really opened up about any of the things. And I'm the first person that they've really opened up about the things to. And we've had conversations in the past, and she basically tested the water with a good friend of theirs not that long ago to say and be honest of where I'm at instead of I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. And on the other side of that, mutual sharing happened because there were other things. And it's not like it was a one-up where I need to commiserate or anything like that. It became a safe space for both individuals to understand the humanness and the rawness of life. And their bond has grown 10 times deeper as a result of that, because they're speaking their truth and they're speaking their reality. And I know with certainty, there is no version of me that would want to go back to the version that said, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. It felt easier in my mind at the time to operate. And now I know all the things that I was robbing myself from. And I do credit the safe place and the soft space to land. And I will say motorcycles, once again, this started out as motivation and it was based on the community that we've cultivated here. I'm so grateful that one life choice was the thing that invited these souls into my life, that really have provided that in this, because I didn't know when I made those decisions that this was a destination I was traveling to. I had no fucking clue. And I also have no idea where I'm going from this point forward because I didn't get the map book for this. I am now carving out a new road that I didn't even know existed. But I do know I'll be okay. And being okay doesn't mean not feeling all the feelings. I just know I'll be okay as a human because of all of those feelings.
Yeah, beautifully put.
Does that mean we get to sing?
Yeah. Renee sang with me on the other one. I was very pleased.
She's a much better singer than I am. All right.
Motivation,
beautiful.
It's better every time.
It's beautiful. You know what's funny is I had my thought in my brain and then I sang and it went away so fast.
Oh no.
Oh, it's back. It's back. It's back. I sang. I was like, I know what I'm going to say. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I hit the high note. And now I have no idea. So this is going to feel like a funny one for this, but I'm just going to share it because it's been really helpful for me. And again, we're 4 weeks in. And obviously, we've talked a lot in this episode about showing up for your people and really just more from the witnessing of pain. But what Laurie said was so bang on about having the compassion and allowing within yourself. I had so many emotions moving through a really, imagine you're in, I was in a storm. So the waves were coming constantly. And it was very overwhelming for me. Even though I knew I was going to sit in this, it was extremely overwhelming. So I know that we talk a lot about therapy, which for the record, everybody, I have a new therapist and I feel really stoked on that. So that's going to be the route. But when the waves were crashing in and I'm by myself now in a condo that I used to hang out with my very best friend and partner of 20 years, which is, I'm good on my own and I feel like I'm a fun person by myself to hang out with, but it's disconcerting when you are constantly reminded of what is missing. It's been like a death, but the person's still alive is the best way I can describe it. So I started art therapy because it's a tremendous way to get your emotions out through a state of flow. I actually have never had or harnessed this much creativity within myself in a long time. So that overwhelming feeling when it was getting too much, I went to the dollar store, I bought a bunch of canvas. The point was not to become an artist. It was just to allow my emotions out onto the canvas. I'm going to say the journal's been out too, but I'm finding a medium to work through that state of overwhelm and having a tool that works for you when you are in those moments on your own, because you don't want to deny. It was tempting to shut down, turn the TV on, crack a beer. All those things were much more tempting because they seem more appealing in those moments because it would be the quickest escape route out of the overwhelm. But instead, try and find healthy ways to channel your emotions. It honestly, I ended up journaling the one day afterward because it brought me into this lighter space. Not immediately. I think I painted for hours, but the lightness off my shoulders from knowing I wasn't carrying all of that inside, where several hours prior it was so knotted within me. I think it's just really important to find what works for you if you are feeling very overwhelmed in the storm.
Ironically, the fact that you used a storm as your feeling is perfect because my motivation, or not my, yeah, we sing it every time, and now I forgot what it actually is. Motivation maintenance is exactly that metaphor. So for the person, now mine's going to be for the person, for yourself, who's in a space and place where you are supporting somebody that is in the storm. And the best way that I describe it is essentially it's emotional regulation, co-regulation. So you're taking your regulated state and you're not trying to regulate them, but you are offering your state as kind of a homing device almost. But so what that would actually look like in real time is I always describe it as like you're a buoy in the ocean. And so that person is in the storm. There's thunder, there's lightning cracking. Think of the lightning as like anger. They say something really abrupt, right? And they're just like, yeah, fuck that or fuck this. And then want to lightning straight with them. No. You're the buoy that is just bobbing in the water. And so you are along with them. You're in the motion of it all, but you ebb and you flow. And it's okay. Like the lightning's not going to affect you. It's not personal. Nothing is. You don't need to join in the trash talk. You don't need to join in the whatever it is. You're just acknowledging their experience. And if they're exceptionally like they're in a space where they're scared by their emotions, that's when you can turn into. I did a workshop on this lighthouse in the storm, and that's also that co-regulation of just saying that you're safe. I'm here. You're safe, and it's letting them know shore is near. And essentially, because when somebody feels so out of control in their emotional state, that obviously call for help if need be. But quite literally, I mean that like emergent line if it gets to that state or anything. But one of the best things you can do for somebody is quite literally saying out loud, you are safe, because their body and nervous system think that they're in actual danger when that emotion gets so overwhelming for them, or their mind gets going too out of control. And so lighthouse, if it's out of control, which is just saying you're safe, just having your emotion, you're safe in it. I'm here. So something like that, super helpful. But if it's in just a range of big emotions, you're the buoy.
I love that. And I've lived it, and shit works, and you'll be closer for it. And I'm just beyond grateful for you, for everyone that's been in my sphere.
That's you, girl.
And like, I'm grateful for this platform, because that's the one thing I said to Laurie. Like, obviously I have to balance a delicate balance of what I'm dealing with because there's another person involved. But I'm like, this is what we're about. Like, you have now, if you've listened to us a long time, like been with Laurie and I through some real shit, because that's fucking life. And Laurie's been in it and I've been in it. We've also been on here to celebrate wins and big life decisions that we've made. And I think the people that have come on here and been willing to be so vulnerable with us as well has allowed us to show up further in this space. So a huge thank you to those that have been on this journey with us. Speaking of journeys, I do want to give a huge shout out to Laurie, because she's starting school to do counseling. Books are piled high.
Books are piled high. I was unpacking them from Canada Post today, and we're like, we're really doing it, Harry.
Yeah, I'm really so proud of you. And thanks, obviously dude. For this community too, I think anyone that's listened recognizes how destined you are for this field and the impact that you already have, but how this will complement that impact in a big way. And I'm just really excited for you. So I didn't prep a quote, and funny enough,
I didn't either.
Kind of have this book, Moonlight Gratitude, which is a gratitude book you normally read at night. But then I flipped it open to the date today, and then I went to the next day because it seemed more appropriate. What we know to be true was once only a perception. As facts and opinions surface, we have the ability to choose how we want to see each thing. If there is a great unknown right now, choose the perspective that will serve the situation best. All things will be revealed in due time. Now, I realize that's not emotion specific, but it does speak to what I was saying earlier, the
very
trusting
much so.
Of the space. Even if you are in the thick of it, the trusting in the space and not being married to an outcome if what has swallowed you in life, big or small, has unknowns on the other side. Lean into that, because your innerness, our inner knowing, That is the lighthouse, really, when you think about it in the storm. And the more connected you can be to that, and the more you can just lean in and trust that for whatever reason, you are exactly where you're supposed to be, I think you're going to be able to navigate it with a lot more truth to the situation, to yourself.
Yeah. As I don't have a quote, but I'll just say one about emotions. No emotion is good or bad. Some are more challenging than others, but they deserve all the same respect and time to process across the board.
And that, my friends,
is your motivation.
You've just listened to the Motovation Podcast with your host, Krissy Vann, and me, Laurie Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motovation Podcast and visit our website at themotovation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.